Well, as you can see, something started out as a very simple project, turned complicated. I was trying to replace both the half shafts because they come with new boots. These boots are obviously torn and open. They allow grease to come out. So I thought you could sneak these out by kind of prying them out on each side, taking the rear diff cover off and pulling the C-clips. That didn't work out at all. So we ended up dropping the entire rear diff out of the car, and these will just kind of pull right out of either side. So once we get those back in, we'll reseal the back plate here and get this back up in the car, and then with the car level, we'll go ahead and refill this with gear oil, 80-90 weight probably. Let me show you what else I got going on here. We've got the brakes taken apart and the rotor's off and all the wheels are off now, so we can start refinishing those. These are the CLK 430 rear wheels, part of a staggered setup that they have. The front ones are just a little bit narrow and the rear is a little bit wider, have a little bit more of a dish to it. I didn't have these when I originally had the car. The owner after me purchased these because he thought he wanted a little wider wheel in the back, and it should look good. I've test fit them, it appears to be okay. So we're gonna get these stripped and refinished. Probably not gonna go back with the machined lip around the edge. That kind of takes specialized equipment. But we'll definitely get all of this corrosion and gunk off of here and just probably respray them with a 2K silver paint. As I said, I've got all the brakes torn apart. Calipers are off. They're not even rebuildable. I'll show you those on the bench here in a second. The pistons inside of them are completely seized. Here's the front spindle. Again, caliper taken off. I ordered all new bearings for the front of these because I started to see metal chunks in the bearing grease for these. These are kind of old school, almost like trailer tires. They have a front and rear tapered wheel bearing with a grease seal in the back. So you can kind of service them and repack them, unlike modern cars where you have to replace the whole thing. So here's some of the carnage. There's the rear calipers. Again, those pistons that are inside there did not want to pull out. I've had it in the bench vise, really pulling on it. These are the front calipers. So, got 4 new of those coming, front and rear brake pads, and those new wheel bearings, like we said, are on the way. Here's one of the new axles, the other one's sitting right there in the box. So brand new boots, nice and shiny. All right, these axles should pull out of either side. In the very, very center of the pumpkin here, there's a little C-clip. Both of those have been pulled out. So I'm gonna try and pull out one without it getting kind of cattywampus and falling off. Oh, baby. There's one. I swear, I didn't try to pull them off until we just got it filmed right now. You know those people like to make it look easy. So there's the actual differential. Goes in the side. This is an open diff, meaning it's not a posi traction or a limited slip. It's a one-wheel peeler. If we look all the way in the back of this case, I see something about an X55. Not really sure what that means. All right, we're gonna get back on this differential, get everything cleaned up and resealed and put back in the car. All right, I almost got ahead of myself. I forgot that I had bought these seals probably 2 months ago. When I bought the axles, I knew we had to do this job, but just wanted to get it running first. So these go here, prevent the oil from leaking out the side, which it probably has done in the past. So let's get these out. See if we can break it. Now we can try and pull it. You're probably saying, why don't you use a seal puller? Well, I think this is a seal puller, but this isn't really working. This is in here pretty good. Maybe we'll see a return of the oxyacetylene torch. There we go. Old one's out. All right, so I do have a seal driver, so let's find what matches this perfectly. We'll get this aligned and tap that in there. That's it, perfect, 65 millimeter. Make sure we're headed the right way. I think that's it. That sounded solid. Cool. All right, let's flip her over. Here's the two clips. These hold the axles inside the differential. And they go right on the end of the splines here once it's inside of the diff. And here we go. So I'm going to put this ring on this axle. It's a spacer, a shim, I guess is the actual term. There's that side. And we'll put this side in. All right, that should be that. Now we can put the clips inside here. All right, on either side, you should be able to see the very end of the axle there. This is hard to film and do at the same time, but I'll show you exactly where we're going to put this clip. Right there, and right there. All right, here's these clips. One faces that way, one faces the other way. All right, now the axles are locked in. They can't fall out of either side. And we'll be able to get all of this cleaned up and put back together. I don't see a whole lot of metal chunks, just some dirt in here. So we're gonna get this all cleaned out with brake clean, get the face of this cleaned, and get that cover bolted back on there. I ordered some new rotors. I was gonna clean these up, try and paint the inside since you can see them through the wheel. But I went on to Rock Auto, was able to get these really, really cheap. They'll be here later this week. So what I'm gonna do this morning is try and take the rotors off. They're actually attached to the center hub that has new wheel bearings and seals that we've purchased and are here. So we're gonna show you how to drive out the races, repack the bearings, and then it'll have a new grease seal that goes on the back of this. Step one of this is that there's 5 10mm Allens that are in here that have probably been in here most of their life. Let's see if they're gonna come out. Hopefully, we don't need the torch again. There's one. There you go. So there's just the rotor, and there's the hub that we're going to reuse and clean up and drive the races out of either side of this. This is only on the front. The rear doesn't have a center hub like this. It has a pressed in bearing from either side. Not gonna lie, I figured that 1 or 2 of those was gonna get stuck and we were gonna have to really struggle to get those out. I guess let me grab a hammer. All right, we get these rotors out of the way. All right, now we can focus on these races. You could probably reuse the old races, but there's no point. We have everything new here. These are kind of grooved just a little bit, so we're gonna press these out, or I'm gonna try to just kind of knock them out from the back real quick. All right, there's one of the races. Let's do the other side. Before we take this over to the other garage and try the shop press. I'm going to try the actual bearing and race driver. I found the closest adapter to this. Let's see if she wants to go in. She's gone. All right, new race is installed. Well, that went too easy. Perfect. All right, new race on that side. So this hub's done. Since we already have the small side driver loaded, let's do the small side. All right, perfect. We didn't even get to use the shop press. All right, now we're gonna get the bearing packer. We will pack grease in both of the rear bearings. These go closest inboard towards the engine. And again, have a grease seal on them. So we'll fill this with grease. This is the same thing that's on your trailer, boat trailer or car trailer or something like that. These are just little tapered roller bearings. And then the grease seal keeps the grease all inside. And then there's a dust boot that goes on the front, a cap, grease cap that goes on the front. All right, got the grease packer repacked. Let's put this bearing in here. And then you put this top part on. And then you step on it and it squeezes the grease all the way through the inside instead of packing it in your hand. All right. All right, and that's a packed wheel bearing. You can tell because the grease has come all the way through the bearing there on all sides. Let's grab a little extra, put it down inside of here. And then the grease seal. So this hub is ready to go back on the car. Let's get the other one going. All right, and this hub is done. I think that's it for our bench work here today. We can go ahead and put these back on the front of the car. All right, we're on the driver's side here. There's probably no point in showing you both sides. They're both the same. But this principle, again, applies for cars and trailers when they have these type of bearings. Make sure all this is clean because this new seal that you got is going to ride on that back surface. And then both of the bearing races ride here. So you want to make sure that everything's nice. Then you're normally going to have some kind of washer that you're going to torque against. That's going to hold the bearing in. And then you're gonna have some sort of nut that goes on the outside. Mercedes has a weird one. This one has a little Allen key in there to tighten it once it's in. And there's a special way that you tighten this. You wanna get it preloaded. And then we'll get the Allen screw and tighten this down and put the cap on. All right, the little screw is loose there. Let's grab some channel locks. So these are brand new bearings, so it's going to take just a little bit to seat them. You'll feel a heavy drag on this. I'm going to keep going to make sure that they're all the way in. And then we'll back this off a little bit until we feel just a slight bit of drag. probably a little too much. You kind of play with this until it feels right. You just got to be sure that the bearings are actually seated all the way into the races. You don't want to put a little bit of pressure on it. Feels great, and then it gets really, really loose. So again, tighten it up so it almost doesn't spin. And then we'll kind of back it off here a little bit. Still feels a little heavy. This is kind of a feel thing. I'm sure there's some sort of technical way of doing this. Too tight, it'll get these bearings too hot. Too loose, they'll be moving all around. You'll be doing this job again. This particular car has some kind of weird copper spring at the end. Not really sure what this does, but it goes in the end of the spindle like so, and somehow puts pressure on the cap. Not really sure. Everything's a hammer. All right, that's one side complete. I'm gonna go do the other side. Before I put the car all the way back up, I figured we'd start this. It doesn't have the exhaust on. It's really disconnected right at the Y pipe. So it's basically running open headers. Let's see what this sounds like. I put the rear differential back in. I'm gonna show you that in a second. And we're gonna get that refilled. I let the RTV set up for 2 days because it's really cold out here. So I got the jump box hooked up. Let's see if she wants to start. It should sound pretty cool. All right, we're gonna get the car up in the air and take a look at this rear diff. All right, as you see, the rear diff is back inside the car. I've got the plug out. We need to refill this with gear oil. So I've got a little pump attached to the top of this bottle. We'll stick this in here and fill it up until we see oil run out of the hole. I've got a drain pan underneath. It's gonna take a little over 1 bottle. All right, there she comes. You want to go until it starts to run out like this. And you know she's at the top. All right, we've got our 14mm Allen. This isn't going to be too terribly exciting. I'm just going to start sanding with 100 grit sandpaper and try to get the majority of all the broken pieces of clear coat off of this wheel, and then put a scratch coat on all of this other stuff. We'll probably start with 100 and work our way back down to 400. 400 probably shouldn't show any of the sanding marks through the paint that we're going to put on. So this times 4, lots of sanding. All right, check back in a bit. All right, so we sanded the wheel with 100 grit, then went to 220 grit, both front and back. I've then hit the entire wheel with a prep wipe that takes all of the dust off of it, any grease or waxes or things like that. We're gonna use Eastwood 2K Rally Silver. It's a 2-part, which actually has a catalyst inside of it, so it gets really hard, almost like a professional grade paint. This is way better and way more expensive than your typical Rust-Oleum paint that as soon as it gets any kind of grease or gas on it would start to run. So we've activated this. We've got like 36 to 48 hours to use this. So we're going to take this up and start with the back of the wheel and then spin it around to the front. All right, we've shaken the paint for about 2 minutes. This stuff's pretty volatile, so we're going to wear a mask, respirator. So that was an entire can. We've let it flash for about 3 to 7 minutes on each coat. We did 3 coats on this. As you can see, she's pretty glossy. We're gonna see when we're done if we need to put any kind of clear coat over this or not. But this finish should dry really hard. We just gotta do this times 3 more wheels. All right, I'm gonna put these things somewhere warm so they can finish curing. We'll get some tires for them, next week sometime. I guess that's gonna be it for this video. I'm gonna wait for the calipers and the brake rotors to come in, and our next video we'll be putting the brakes together on the car, and then maybe we'll go take it for a ride.